Coming up on Fernand's live show Extra.
When I sort of read the notes of what they wanted to achieve, I was like, man, this will never work. And that was tricky due to all the moving parts. The Dropcam was hanging loose for a while. It's something else to sort of wing a performance when you have 200 million viewers. But hey, let's go for it.
Hello live TV lovers, welcome to Fernand's live show Extra. Yes, that's right, it's a sidecar to Fernand's live show, taking an extended look and an extended chat at the people that make the show happen. And 12 points for guessing. This is all about the Eurovision Song Contest 2024. And it gives me great pleasure to present my extended chat with this year's senior multi-camera director, Robin Hofwander. He's an established name in the Eurovision ecosystem, this being his third Eurovision in the director's chair, looking after 13 and 16. He's a big name on campus on Melodifestivalen, the Swedish national finals, and over 20 years in the industry working on some of Sweden's biggest programs. If it's live and if it's music, you can bet your finger click, Robin's probably behind it. And this year, Robin makes up part of a multi-camera directing trio featuring Daniel Jelinek and Fredrik Bäcklund, both big names in the Eurovision, Melodifestivalen and live TV space in Sweden. In today's episode, you'll find out the science behind plotting 20-something cameras on a rather unique stage, live edit, an important tool of the multi-camera director's arsenal and how it became part of this year's contest, and how this year's show had a filmic feel to it. I'll give you a clue, it's 3 letters, PSF. So, sit back and enjoy this extended chat with this year's senior multi-camera director, Robin Hofwander.
You're listening to Fernand's live show Extra, going behind the scenes of live TV.
Hello Robin, how are you? How's things and how's life post Eurovision?
Well, it's good. I've had some time to relax, which was needed. I had Melfest as well in the spring and it just kept on going into Eurovision. So not too many days off this year, but since Eurovision, I've had time to relax. So that's great.
Wonderful stuff. So we're back in Sweden for 2024. This being your third Eurovision in the director's chair. Is it third time lucky?
Well, yeah, but I think 16 was a great success as well. I think we really nailed that show. It was super. And this was like, it felt like the next natural step. I think we were bold and tried new stuff for a show like this, for a show like Eurovision with the set design and also the camera placement. It was like a different take on Eurovision.
Great. Tell me a little bit about this year. It's a new look to what we're especially used to in terms of staging and graphics. Tell me a little bit about what new things were added this year.
Well, I think the set design is really what set it apart from previous Eurovisions, sort of going in the round with having a centric stage. It was not really 360, but more like 240-ish. I attacked it by thinking it had 3 fronts, like the main front and then the 2 90-degree angles. So the camera setup was with that in mind to allow for performances to sort of turn 90 degrees and have full coverage in that angle as well. And also the cubes in the ceiling, it felt like usually Eurovision is more of a big space and a big stage and a lot of lights, but it's mostly just air. It's a big venue, but this time we've sort of filled the venue and the air in the venue with these 5 cubes, which sort of gave a strong perspective and also became like the centerpiece of the production. And I think it allowed for a different style of shooting and allowing for shots to sort of work even though they are from an angle or from a sort of a new perspective. And that was fun.
We'll touch a bit more on cameras later, but speaking of the cubes, there's one camera that really uses these cubes to great effect.
Yeah, the Dropcam. It's like in 16 maybe it was used before that on Eurovision, I don't know, but actually in 13 we introduced the centric wire like 2D system going down the center line, which is so useful for doing a big show like this. And it just works. I love staying center, and everything just looks great. And not being able to do this year due to the cubes, it got me thinking, like, what do we do? How do we achieve something that still is eccentric and cool and can be sort of, you know, the key shot of the show? And so we started investigating the possibility to leave sort of a gap in the middle cube and allowing for a camera to drop down, and it worked. It was a snug fit, but it worked.
We'll touch more on cameras and all that a little bit later, but tell me a little bit about your directing team. You were, of course, a senior multi-camera director this year. Who else forms up the directing group, and which parts of the show do you roughly oversee?
Well, we were 3 directors this year. It was me and Fredrik Bäcklund, whom I share Melodifestivalen with. So we've been working together for years doing that show. And Daniel Jelinek, whom I've done Eurovision with the previous years. So I know them both well and know they are more than capable of doing a show like this.
So it's a trio of Eurovision directors this year. Was it a necessary move this time around?
The big benefit from it was workload. 16, I know both me and Daniel, we almost died. We worked all night. It was so much hard work and not enough hours in a day. So the big difference now was that we actually didn't have to work night as much. So when Fredrik was preparing his songs, I could work on changes on mine, and that was excellent. Yeah, the basic split was that I did all of the contest for semi 1, and Fredrik did all contests semi 2, and Daniel, he took care of hosts and intervals and all of that. And it felt like a pretty good split. I also took care of some of the interval acts and you know, sort of oversaw the show and also did the prep work for the show, doing the camera plot and all of that prep work.
Great. Okay, let's go back to the very beginning. When did you get the call to be involved in this year's show? When did this all begin? And what's been the rough timeline before you even sit down in the director's chair?
Well, I became a part of the project, I think September, something like that. And what we did first was to look at the tenders for set designs, production design, and decide which way we wanted to go. And from that point, I sort of worked on camera plots and trying to incorporate them, which were sort of constantly changing. And we had many versions of the set design as well. It started out as a sort of a bigger stage, and we narrowed it down and ended up with this in the round solution. So during the course of that, I changed the camera plot quite a few times to sort of make it fit for where we were. That has been my main focus, working out the cameras and trying to figure out how to shoot this stage.
Camera plots. Tell me a little bit more about the positionings. I noticed that, for example, on each of the 3 planes, you had a fixed camera, and then you had a rail as well. You had loads of rails in the whole setup. Tell me about each of the positionings.
As I mentioned, I sort of looked at it as a 3-front stage. Obviously, the main direction more packed with cameras, but I think it was more sparse than I'm used to on a show like this, since I had to sort of divide the cameras on the different angles. But in the front, in the main front, we had 3 close-up cameras, as well as two dollies, and obviously the 2D system as well. And then for the 90-degree fronts, the stage left and stage right front, I had 1 close-up camera, as well as a dolly to cover that. And also on the reverse, the 180 front, I had 1 close-up camera. And I just felt that having a close-up on every front sort of makes for a cool solution. I think it's great to be able to, as an artist or a group of dancers, just move forward and then turn 180 and have a camera just ready for it. So, I mean, some of the cameras didn't see as much action as others, but I just thought it was worth it just to be able to be ready for all those angles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was used pretty well with Ukraine, sort of turning each of the angles where, of course, you got a sort of frontal view, then you got from what looks like behind, and really clever camera angles. And even for Estonia as well, when they're doing their dance move and there's a camera from the back sort of capturing all of their angles in the last section of the song. So it's really well used.
Yeah, and I think Switzerland is a really good example of utilizing the stage and the different angles. I think that performance was so cool because you didn't understand where you were in the room, from which angle or direction you were shooting it. And to me, that was the moments that the stage really worked the best. Like, where am I? It's just it looks cool. And that was really super.
Yeah, I agree. And visually, it was incredible to watch. Really, really, really good. So Specialized cameras from the rails to the cranes. This is all from the continuous solid partnership with Opatech of Ukraine.
Well, basically, I just had my camera plot with sort of the wish, what I wanted to achieve. And in cooperation with them, we decided on all the heights of the dollies and the platforms to put them on, and every little detail. So it felt like they really understood what we were aiming for and trying to achieve with each camera, and had excellent input on that.
Yeah. Speaking of which, how many cameras were there this year?
Yeah, I actually pulled up the plot here. We had, I call them the Infield cameras. The cameras actually working the performances, and there we had 19. And then in addition to that, I also had 3 PTC cameras, the Sony FR7s, which are basically FX6's movie style cameras. 3 of them as beauty shots, and then 3 cameras in the green room. So that in total adds up to 25.
Now, regarding Steadicams, there was an interesting setup with the French entry this year. It wasn't part of the official rig or official team with the core operator. Yeah, what was the story behind that?
Yeah. Well, counting that camera, we had 26, because that was an additional camera, and that was. It was a wish from France to shoot it with this special Steadicam rig. But basically, it's a Steadicam that you can angle and shoot low and high as well, so you can sort of flip it around. And they wanted to use movie lens and a movie camera, so we ended up with an FX9, I believe, for that. And we actually brought in a French operator because we didn't have one in Sweden available to do it. So it was all French solution. I mean, they really wanted to do this and thought it was worth it. And it looked really great. I love the way it turned out.
Great. So this year had a notable change in the camera cutting system, of course, from the previous, for the last 10 or so years, Q-Pilot, to this year, Live Edit. How did this all come about?
Well, the thing is, to me, it wasn't a switch at all, since I'm used to using Live Edit, and that is actually the main purpose. Because why do a switch for a big show? That would make me nervous to start using a program I'm not used to working with. So I've been using Live Edit for 6 years or so, and we've been having it on Melodifestivalen for quite a few years now. So that's the program I know in and out, and how to work it. But it worked really, really great. And I mean, I wasn't surprised at all. I'm used to having it, and we rely on it 100% on Melodifestivalen as well.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a bit more than just a cam switcher. It seems to have a bit of a unique place across the whole production.
Well, we used it in pre-production as well, as a part of the creative tool for laying out all the sequences of the performances. So, for instance, the light designer and the screens designer, they wrote their notes in, like the programming notes in directly into Live Edit. So all the operators, they pulled their info from Live Edit. And also we did all the previews were uploaded into Live Edit. So when I sat down to do my script, I already had like a previous from Light and from Content, and as well as the director's video. And also going into production and doing the stand-in rehearsal. The delegations, they got a link directly to Live Edit, so we ended up having all their notes and comments directly in the timeline in Live Edit. So that was really, really nice. And then during production for each pass we did, or each rehearsal, we got additional notes from viewing room directly into the timeline. And so it was just really like, it felt really easy to work like that, because you never had to sort of open a Google Sheet and transfer comments and stuff into your timeline. It was always there, and you could just tick it and move on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So basically, essentially translating their dreams and their wishes into something that's realistic on screen that gives them what they want.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, so speaking of delegations and taking notes from here and all of that, tell me a little bit about the process of getting used to each country's wishes and dreams and getting the realistic side of things on stage.
Well, I mean, it varies a lot. Some make impossible requests or have a real dreamy wish list, and then you sort of have to. I mean, we have the meeting. What's the name of the meeting? We have like 20 minutes with each delegation. Speed dates. So we have the speed dates, and that's like the first meet where they present their idea and what they want to do, and we just sort of ingest and make notes and discuss what's possible or not, and then we get back to them with like this is doable, or this might be tricky and you might have to rethink this part. And from there we get the rehearsal videos and all we need, the director's videos. And then we start, well, we have an initial meeting where we discuss all performances as a big creative group. And from there we sort of start working individually and get to it and start scripting. And some of the countries, they have a script already done, and in some cases the scripts are super. So you just have to sort of look it over and see, well, is this camera really best suited for this, and look at the logistics of it. And in some cases you sort of, I get where you are going, but I need to tweak it to make it work. And in some cases it's not good at all, and then you have to sort of rework it and still sort of try to understand what is the essence that they want to achieve, and sort of interpret that and make it as good as you can possibly do it.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess translating what parts may not work initially in terms of, oh, I want to do this and it doesn't quite work, but then giving them an actual realistic alternative that meets what they're looking for.
Yeah. And I mean, it can be logistics. The classic is like having a Steadicam on stage and the next shot is a wide shot. It's like, it doesn't work. You have to find the logistics in order to get the Steadicam off before you go wide again. And in some cases, it can be like the rhythm of the pace of the cuts. It's not working with the music, or you as a director feel like, woof, I can't stand behind this. I need to rework it so that I can understand it and be proud of it. Because it's really hard to move forward creatively when you don't when you don't understand what is this. So you need to own it as a director before you move on. I think that's very important.
Okay, now you mentioned Switzerland earlier. Were there any other entries that you were really excited to direct?
Actually, Switzerland was directed by Fredrik Bäcklund, my colleague. He did an excellent job with that. But yeah, performances I enjoyed. I did the Benjamin Ingrosso interval act. That was super fun.
That was really good to watch. Yeah.
It was really a killer performance. He's so great actually. So that was great fun to do. And I mean, regarding the songs, Ireland was quite mental and fun. I enjoy that. What else did we have? Let me pull up Live Edit and have a check. Oh yeah. Serbia was really cool. I enjoy that. I think that was a really great performance. And Lithuania as well. That was fun. UK, obviously, that was really tricky.
Yeah, the UK entry was different this year. How did all that pan out? I mean, visually, we were treated to something completely different. How did all that pan out?
Yeah. Well, basically, they were standing in a box, and that makes it kind of tricky. And also I'd say for like 80% of the performance, we had the Dropcam down, being the main camera shooting into the room in order to achieve the wide angle. So we wanted to have a camera closer to the room. But that also blocks all the other cameras. So we had to sort of shoot on the side of the Dropcam, and at one point I think we had a steady move and a handheld. But it was a lot of trickery with like having a camera 90 degrees and spinning cameras digitally, and a lot of like tricky timings. But I think it was a really well thought out performance. And when I sort of read the notes of what they wanted to achieve, I was like, man, this will never work. But it actually did. And I think actually the first pass was like, okay, we've got this. So that was quite fun.
Excellent. That's really good to hear. Now, one part of the direction which I thought was really significant, and it's a small detail, but it makes so much sense. And it was during the voting, and it was basically the time taken to capture the reaction of the country getting the 12 points before cutting back to the scoreboard and then seeing the actual result change. Now, usually this kind of point in the show is glossed quite quickly. You see the 12, or sometimes you don't, cut straight to the green room, all of that. But because it's such I found it really good to actually see that little detail. Was this a deliberate point of direction from you and the team, and where did it come about, if so?
Yeah, it was something we discussed, because that is a tricky moment, because what happens is that you have two things happening at the same time. You want to see the reaction, but you also want to see the scoreboard and the changing of the scoreboard so you can follow along. And if you can't follow along, it's like, as a viewer, you get lost immediately. So we were talking about that. The usual way to do it is to sort of stay in the two box, like the split screen between the scoreboard and the reaction shot. But yeah, we were discussing how to do it. I wasn't really involved in the details of that, but I know that it was deliberate.
So yeah, were there any new things within the production that you personally wanted to see?
It's always fun to do Eurovision, because you get a lot of fun toys. So it's a great opportunity to sort of try stuff. And I mean, the Dropcam is one of those things. We had a Dropcam in 16 as well, but utilized more as a sort of a beauty camera. But this time it was more of a like in mid-performance camera, right in the action. So that was fun to make work, and that was tricky due to all the moving parts, because what we had was the cube that could move up and down, and within the cube there was a light pod that could move up and down independent of the cube, and in that light pod there was a 1x1 meter hole for the Dropcam to move through. So we had 3 parts moving at the same spot, and also the pods, they could angle, tilt, and when they tilted, the hole got too small for the Dropcam to pass. So it was really, we had to be aware, like what is happening with all the automation. So it was the Dropcam was hanging loose for a while. It was like, this is too dangerous. But I'm really happy that we managed to squeeze it in.
Mm-hmm. Out of a little sort of nerdy point of interest, how wide was the clearance between the actual platform of the camera itself and the edge of the lighting pod? Because I imagine it can't have been that much.
No, actually, I wasn't really aware how tight it was until I saw it with my own eyes, and that made me worried. I mean, other persons than me, they were in control of this and knew, but it looked really, really tight. But we had zero issues, so that's a relief.
Yeah, good. Are there any more sort of technical Easter eggs or techie bits and pieces within the production that you'd be happy to share?
Well, for the nerds, I think this was the first time ever that we produced the Eurovision in PSF, and that is a move. I have always loved PSF because I love this progressive style, going away from interlaced and less video, more sort of cinema-ish, and I think it's super for music, and I tend to use it on all music productions I do. And since I think 4-5 years maybe, we've been doing it on Melodifestivalen as well. I know a lot of people are against PSF because what you do is you actually make the signal worse because you take away some information. But I don't care about that because it looks beautiful. So I was very happy to have that on the Eurovision this year. I think it really adds to music production. Going back to live edit, what we did, like when you start going out of the postcard, when we get a stage clear and we start the backtrack. The backtrack, obviously, I mean, it runs the music and the time code going to the front of house for all the lights and video, but also going to the track for live edit. And live edit, then we queued all the on-screen graphics. So there was a separate track for that in live edit, just to have that in sync with the postcard. So by having it all running off time code, it was like the graphic was in sync all the time with all the transitions. And then we had the activation cue, the little ding ding ding, and then the song starts. And going out of the song, since this year was the first time the voting was open throughout all the performances, we added the phone number for voting after each performance. And that needed to be 12 seconds long due to regulations. And in order to keep it exactly 12 seconds, we added a deactivation cue as well. So going out of the performance, we did the thank you shot and audience shots. And then the deactivation audio started. And then we had 1 or 2 automated shots in the end going into the next postcard. And by having that running off time code, we could also trig the graphics with the phone number. So that was exactly 12 seconds. And this was in order to secure that 12-second slot for on-screen graphics, but also to make sure that we wasn't adding a few seconds after every performance, because a few seconds times 26, that becomes minutes. So we needed to keep it short, but not shorter than 12.
Excellent. Yeah, that would be a concern because, a second here and then a minus a second here can really throw things in terms of flux. So I guess in terms of the actual running of the show, where the majority of it is on time code and with live edit, what parts of the show weren't, and how, in terms of making sure that everything was fit to time, how did that fit? Was it a case of being really strict on the looser parts to make sure everything else fitted accurately?
Well, Eurovision is one of those few shows where you have an open end. So you don't really have to be super nitpicky on time, but we were aware and we had a goal to not make the show longer than the previous year. So we really wanted to keep it as tight as possible. But that precision, that like this millisecond precision that you have with time code, it isn't necessary for like hosts and lines to camera and stuff like that. So I think that was a bit looser, but still obviously on time.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask about the reprise at the end, which feels like a bit of an innovation from Melodifestivalen, where it's the performers just singing on stage, no props, just them, all the lights, all the cameras just being freely directed. What's the background behind that? It seems like it's an innovation for Melfest to save time from props being brought on stage and all of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It comes from Melodifestivalen, and actually it wasn't anything we discussed on forehand. It came up on site. Maybe we should do it like this. And it was due to two reasons. Obviously, that we all felt that it really worked out well on Melodifestivalen to do it like that, and the reason we did it on Melodifestivalen was to sort of give room for emotions rather than having the artist like stepping back in line and doing the performance locked in, which is more like you could almost play the tape, have a rerun. And we've been trying on Melodifestivalen, to sort of bring on something else to sort of get them on the loose, but it never worked. Whatever we did, it just became the same performance. So we just tried to take it all away and have nothing. And I mean, it doesn't become the cool performance or the good looking performance, but it becomes about just showing what's happening and leaving room for emotions and good vibes. So that was our hope, and we had that in the back of our minds from Melodifestivalen. But also what we had was the giant LED screen opening up for the green room. And once that was open, we couldn't close it. So then we would have to do a performance with an open LED screen. And I mean, yeah, that could have worked in some instances, but it could also be totally messed up depending on the winner. So having that issue to sort of find a solution to this became like the most natural solution. And I mean, it was fun, but it's something else to sort of wing a performance when you have 200 million viewers. But hey, let's go for it.
Now, do you prefer 3D directing with just cameras and cutting as and when, or do you prefer actually relying on a solid script going through and that's all sorted out as you would have with Live Edit?
I mean, on a show like this, it's obviously easier to have it all on Live Edit and have it like scripted, automated, and well rehearsed. But I'm really used to winging music as well. That's where I come from, and I've been doing loads of festivals and concerts and different TV shows where we just wing it. And I think there can come really good things from winging a performance where you get shots you would never had dreamt of from the operators. They see stuff, they catch stuff, and you can catch the emotion. But then you need to have an artist that is winging it as well in order to make that really good. And I think for the Eurovision, the issue was that we never got to rehearse it at all. So we're doing a show where we are scripting everything. Every single bit of music is scripted. So all the operators and all the directors were all locked in on time code, like moving frames, aiming for perfection. And then all of a sudden, we're winging it with 26 cameras. And I mean, you have to sort of reset. So it becomes harder when you're not in it. When you're winging a full performance, you read the screens in a different way and you're used to it and you're in that momentum. But when you're winging something all of a sudden after been scripting stuff for 3 weeks, it's really it's new, but it was fun.
Yeah, brilliant. And now that the contest is over, of course, on the production side, not so much about the dramatic side, but now the contest is over, what are your lasting memories of this year, of 2024, 3 contests over the last 11 years, this year being different in terms of presentation and production. Yeah, what are your lasting memories from this year?
Well, production aside, because I think the production was a success. I think it looked amazing, and we achieved our hopes and goals with the set design and the camera setup. But I mean, it was a lot of stuff overshadowing the production in terms of politics and I mean, horrible stuff going on in the world. So that was definitely overshadowing parts of the experience on site. Also, I mean, having all that security in place and being constantly aware of that something could happen, and having that focus on what flags are we seeing? Are there any protests that we need to avoid on screen? So that was something that was in the back of our heads at all time, which I would rather had been without, but will definitely be something I will remember about this production, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I can only imagine from your point of view and from the decision makers at the top, it must have been pretty fraught backstage in terms of everything happening there.
From my perspective, it was quite cool, but just having that awareness, and also sort of on Saturday getting the sense that okay, we'll see how this goes, but it went really well, and we didn't have any incidents whatsoever. But it's unfortunate to have to be aware and think of stuff like that. We just want to have fun and put on a good show.
Great stuff. So looking ahead to next year, what's in the pipeline? Is there any news about being involved within the Swedish delegation next year? Or, as I'm guessing, is that too early to tell?
It's probably early to tell, but I will be working on Melodifestivalen next year. So I guess I will be there with the Swedish delegation, at least. I hope so.
Wonderful. And the circle begins again, which is great.
Exactly.
Robin, thank you so much for this. It's been great to hear about your experiences in this year's Eurovision, and hopefully we'll see more. Well, we will work on screen soon.
Probably. Thank you very much.
You're listening to Fernand's live show extra, going behind the scenes of live TV.
So there you have it, a vibrant and in-depth insight into the visual world of Eurovision 24 from senior multi-camera director Robin Hofwander. There's a lot to think about and bear in mind, not just creatively and visually in such a position, and it's actually really fascinating hearing the method to the madness, from the tightly scripted to the free and emotional connection driven. I mean, it's perfect if you love balancing the creative and the logical. Plus there's 26 cameras to work with. It's no mean feat. If you enjoyed this episode, please ensure you hit like, subscribe to Fernand's live show on Instagram, TikTok, and of course YouTube, and check out all my previous content where I take a look at some of the biggest shows on the planet. Until next time, people, you know what to do. Stay alive and hit record. Peace.